Air Force One is idle on the tarmac at Joint Base Andrews. Inside the Oval Office, a decision is sitting on the Resolute desk, unsigned. Donald Trump has just told Axios reporter Barak Ravid 4 words that are about to move oil markets, missile crews and embassies from Doha to Tel Aviv. I am considering a massive attack. He didn't stop there. Bigger than ever before. I am close to making a decision. We are all set for it. That's not a campaign rally line. That's the President of the United States on the record, describing an operation that could dwarf anything Iran has already survived this year. And Iran has survived a lot. Signal number 1, this isn't a threat out of nowhere. It's night 13. 13 consecutive nights of American strikes on Iranian soil, confirmed by U.S. Central Command in a public statement. Drone storage facilities, communication networks, coastal surveillance sites, maritime capabilities. CENTCOM says the goal is to diminish the threat Iran poses. But here's what nobody is telling you clearly enough. This war was supposed to be over in May. Rewind 5 months, February 28th, 2026. 2:10 a.m. Tehran time. Operation Epic Fury. The United States and Israel launch a coordinated strike that the Pentagon later calls one of the largest B-2 operations in American history. 14 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, the largest bunker buster bomb on Earth, dropped on Fordo and Natanz. Tomahawk cruise missiles hit the Isfahan Nuclear Technology Center. In the opening hours, Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is killed. So is the IRGC commander-in-chief. So is the Armed Forces chief of staff. Within 48 hours, the war has spread to 7 countries: Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iraq. Iran calls its response Operation True Promise 4. Here's the shocking detail almost nobody outside the intelligence community focused on. Before a single bomb dropped, Steve Witkoff told American negotiators that Iran claimed to be sitting on 460 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%. That's a technical step, 7 to 10 days, from weapons grade. Keep that number in your head. It's going to matter again before this script ends. By May 5th, Epic Fury officially concludes. The public story is total victory. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth calls it total air dominance. The classified story, leaked from the Defense Intelligence Agency, says something else entirely. Iran moved most of its enriched stockpile before the bombs ever landed. The underground facilities didn't fully collapse. The nuclear program was set back by months, not years. That leak alone should tell you everything about why we're back here again in July. Enter the shuttle diplomacy. This is where the story stops being about bombs and starts being about couriers. Steve Witkoff, the president's Middle East envoy. Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, unofficially running parallel talks. Abbas Araghchi, Iran's foreign minister. Qatar's Prime Minister, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, playing host and go-between. None of them meet Iran directly in a room the way you'd picture a negotiation. Araghchi described it himself, indirect talks. Messages passed through Omani and Qatari intermediaries. Papers slid across tables in Muscat and Doha without a single American and Iranian official shaking hands on camera. At one point, Araghchi says he actually asked Witkoff a question mid-negotiation. Have you ever been in a meeting where there was a chance of being bombed at any moment? That's not a metaphor. U.S. strikes were happening while the talks were happening. On June 17th, the two sides finally signed something concrete. A memorandum of understanding. A 60-day ceasefire extension. The deal is supposed to buy time to negotiate the real issues. The Strait of Hormuz, Iran's frozen assets, somewhere between $124 and $167 billion, depending on which estimate you trust. Long-term sanctions relief. And the nuclear program, again, for about 2 weeks. It almost holds. But here's the catch. The MOU has a clause, free, unrestricted passage through the Strait of Hormuz for the duration of negotiations. That clause is the reason the U.S. agreed to lift its blockade and drop sanctions in the first place. The IRGC's Persian Gulf Strait Authority decided, on its own, to break that rule. They started demanding that every ship transiting the strait report in, request approval, and pay a toll to Tehran. That's not the Iranian government's public position. That's the Revolutionary Guard acting like its own sovereign entity, overriding its own foreign ministry's signature. This is the internal friction nobody puts in a headline. Araghchi and Witkoff building trust in a hotel conference room, while the IRGC leadership decides, unilaterally, to sabotage the exact clause that made the ceasefire possible. On the American side, there's friction too. Inside the administration, there's a documented split. Vance, Witkoff, and Kushner want to keep negotiating. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and CIA Director John Ratcliffe are the other camp. The Doves believe Iran's economic desperation outweighs the Revolutionary Guard's hardline instincts. The Hawks think Tehran is negotiating in bad faith and needs to be hit again before it can rebuild anything. Trump has been listening to both, and for a while he sided with pressure. By July 8th, oil is already reacting. Brent crude jumps more than 3% in a single day, crossing $76 a barrel as the ceasefire cracks. By July 13th, it's worse. A Cyprus-flagged container ship, the MV GFS Galaxy, is attacked while transiting the strait. The U.S. blames Iran directly. CENTCOM responds with what it calls dozens of strikes to degrade Iran's ability to hit vessels in the strait, hours after striking hundreds of targets across the country in a single night. Iran's answer is immediate. A wave of missile and drone attacks against the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, and Bahrain, all in the same 24-hour window. Brent crude climbs again past $78. The domino effect here is not abstract. Before the war, the strait moved roughly a fifth of the entire world's oil supply. At peak crisis in April, UK MTO data showed as few as 5 vessels a day making the crossing, down from an average of 138 daily transits before any of this started. Brent crude hit $114 a barrel in that earlier spike. At one point this year, WTI briefly touched above $116 intraday, with Trump warning on a deadline for Iran to reopen the strait that a whole civilization could die tonight. If the strait effectively closes for good, energy analysts aren't guessing anymore. They've already watched it happen once, in real time this year. Now, the second front opens. This week, Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen fire on 2 Saudi tankers overnight. Not U.S. ships, Saudi ships. That's a second brand new choke point. The Red Sea and the Bab al-Mandeb Strait join the Strait of Hormuz as active war zones for global shipping. Trump's response comes on Truth Social, not through a press briefing. He reminds the world that a year earlier, the U.S. bombed the Houthis very powerfully for the exact same behavior, and that since then, in his words, they have acted very responsibly. Then the warning, if they do this again, the U.S. will hold Iran responsible, and major military punishment will be inflicted upon Iran and, of course, the Houthis themselves. Brent crude breaks $100 a barrel again for the first time in 2 months. That's Wall Street's Iran indicator, and it just flashed red. Here's the third person in the room nobody's been asking about, Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel has not been directly involved in this latest round of strikes or in the current negotiations. That's unusual, given how central Israel was to Operation Epic Fury back in February. But Trump has now said explicitly that Israel would join any massive new attack upon his request. That means the decision sitting on Trump's desk isn't just American. It's a green light that could pull Israel back into direct combat operations at the exact moment mayors in Israeli cities are already ordering public bomb shelters reopened. And Defense Minister Israel Katz is publicly stating Israel is prepared for every possibility. Netanyahu, for now, is a spectator with a standing invitation. That's the pivot most people are missing. This isn't only a Trump versus Iran story anymore. It's a Trump decides whether Israel re-enters story, and that decision could be made in hours, not weeks. Meanwhile, Pakistan is doing something almost nobody is covering. Islamabad is actively working to restart the stalled peace talks, according to Reuters reporting this week. Pakistan mediated an earlier round of quadrilateral talks in Switzerland alongside Qatar that included both the U.S. and Iran at the same table in June. When that Pakistani outreach became public, markets actually calmed. Stocks rose. Oil prices briefly fell, on nothing more than hope that an off-ramp still exists. That's how fragile this is right now. A single diplomatic phone call from Islamabad can move the price of crude oil more than an actual missile strike. So, which is it? Is Trump bluffing the way he has before, or is this the real one? Retired U.S. Vice Admiral Robert Murrett has a specific read on it. He believes massive attack doesn't mean invasion. It means a dramatically escalated air campaign, no large ground deployments, no occupation force. But Republican Congressman Michael McCaul is already framing this as a war the U.S. is winning, telling Fox News the military was winning this war against Iran. 2 different definitions of victory from 2 different people in the same administration's orbit in the same week. Here's the second pivot, the one buried in the fine print of every ceasefire this year. The nuclear question was never actually closed. That 460 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. Remember it. At one point during negotiations, Iran reportedly offered to blend that stockpile down to lower, safer enrichment levels in exchange for a longer-term deal allowing limited enrichment for civilian reactors. The U.S.'s side, under Witkoff, rejected it, insisting on something closer to zero enrichment. Analysts at the Arms Control Association have gone on record saying American negotiators were, in their words, ill-prepared for how seriously Iran meant its counteroffer. That single unresolved disagreement over uranium percentages and reactor fuel is arguably the real root of every single strike that's happened since May. Not oil, not shipping tolls, uranium. Everything else, the tankers, the tolls, the Houthi attacks, is downstream of that one unresolved number. So here's where this stands tonight, July 25th, 2026. The US and UK are reportedly planning a high-level meeting in London next week to build an international coalition specifically to protect shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. That's a NATO-adjacent structure being built in real time for a single waterway, because no ceasefire has managed to hold it open on trust alone. Trump has said he hasn't made a final determination on the massive attack. 2 U.S. officials confirmed to Axios that no new military orders have actually been given yet. That means the next 24 to 72 hours are the actual window, not a metaphor. An actual specific window, because Trump himself used the phrase close to making a decision. If he stands down and lets Pakistani mediation restart formal talks, oil likely slides back toward that $70 range we saw at the start of this month. And Arakchi gets another chance to say the words, a good start in Muscat or Doha. If he greenlights the attack and invites Israel in alongside American forces, this stops being a 14-bomb night against enrichment facilities. It becomes something the Pentagon itself has already told Axios would be bigger than ever before. Bigger than the strike that killed a supreme leader in his own compound in February. Bigger than 14 bunker busters on Fordo and Natanz. Peace, brokered through Doha and Islamabad over one final disagreement about uranium percentages, or bombs, bigger than anything this war has already produced. With Israel on standby and oil already testing $100 a barrel before the first missile even leaves the rail. That decision isn't being made in a war room months from now. It's sitting on a desk in Washington, right now, waiting for a signature.